You know, sometimes it don't take much to open the door to the past. Just the right breeze, maybe a song playing low on the radio, or the way the late afternoon light hits the trees just so. But for me, today, it was the smell. I was pulling a pie out of the oven, nothing fancy, just Granny Smith apples with cinnamon and a little brown sugar. And I swear, the second that warm scent hit the air, I was back. Just like that. Like somebody reached right into my chest and flipped through the pages of my memory like an old scrapbook. Lord have mercy, I hadn't thought about that summer in years. But there it was, 1954, Thomaston, Georgia. Red dirt roads, hot as a skillet by noon. Back then, I was just little May, all elbows and freckles, running barefoot from sunup till supper, with more mischief in me than sense. Daddy used to say I had the devil in my feet and a question in my eyes. Mama called me her wild bloom, and I reckon that was her kind way of saying I was a handful. Now, I don't know why this memory's been sticking to me lately. Maybe it's my age 77, if you can believe it, or maybe it's the way time starts to whisper louder the older you get, or maybe it was what happened just last week. My granddaughter Maisie came tearing into the house giggling so hard she could barely breathe. Turns out, she'd gone and tucked a dead frog in her brother's rain boot. Thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And would you believe it? I laughed. I did. But then my heart caught in my throat like a splinter, 'cause I remembered. I remembered a time when I did the very same thing. A frog, a prank, a whole lot of laughter, and a whole lot of tears, too. Back in those days, I thought the world was my playground. I'd tie strings across the road just to see if someone'd fall off their bike. I once made my sister cry so hard before a dance, she wouldn't speak to me for a week. I didn't mean nothing by it. I was just curious, just wild. But I look back now and I think, well, maybe I didn't always know where the line was. So that's why I'm sitting here today, talking to y'all like this. Not just to tell on myself, though Lord knows I earned a few switchings I didn't get, but to share something real. A story I ain't told in a long, long time. Not 'cause I was hiding it, exactly, but because, well, some things just sit quiet in your soul until the time feels right. And today, that time came with the smell of apple pie and the echo of a little girl's giggle in the hallway. I figured maybe it's time I let you in on a few things. Things I did, things I learned, mistakes I made that still tug at the hem of my heart. Not every laugh I had was harmless. Not every joke was kind. And sometimes, you don't know you hurt someone till you see the hurt you pass down. So I hope you'll stay with me a while. It's not all gonna be heavy, Lord, no. There's a heap of laughter in these memories, too. But if you've ever looked back and thought, maybe I could have done better, or maybe I didn't understand back then you'll understand why I'm telling this. I was just a girl. Just little May with dirt on her knees and 1,000 questions in her head. And one summer afternoon, I did something that changed how I saw the world forever. Now, I ain't gonna give it all away just yet. You'll have to stick around for that. But let me ask you something while we're here. What's the one thing you did as a kid that still makes your heart ache a little when you think of it? Think on that a while, darling. And I'll be right here, waiting to tell you the rest. Now, where was I? Oh yes. Back to that summer. 1954. I was 7 years old, going on 17 in my own mind. Thomaston was the whole wide world back then. One little dot on the Georgia map, but to me, it was big enough for every dream I ever dreamed. Our house sat near the edge of a cornfield, where the stalks rustled like secrets in the wind, and the air always smelled like red clay, honeysuckle, and the distant hope of rain. We didn't have much. Lord knows we didn't. Daddy worked at the cotton mill till his knuckles turned to stone, and Mama kept house with nothing but elbow grease and a hymn hummin' low under her breath. We didn't have a pot to pee in, as Daddy'd say, but we had chickens in the yard, tomatoes on the vine, and love thicker than molasses. I shared a room with my older sister June, neat as a pin, hair in braids, heart soft as biscuit dough. And me, I was the opposite, wild as a spring creek and twice as loud. I'd run barefoot till my heels bled, chase dragonflies, climb trees so high Mama near fainted. I thought the world was mine to poke, prod, and play with. I didn't know what it meant to be still. I didn't want to know. Summer was my season. Long, golden days that stretched forever, with dirt under my nails and a jaw full of sour candy I bought for a nickel from Mr. Ballard's corner store. Every morning started the same: biscuits, grits, and the creak of the screen door slap then shut behind me as I tore out into the day like it owed me something. June always rolled her eyes and said, "You're gonna get yourself killed one day, May," and I'd just grin and say, "Not today, I ain't." I thought I was invincible. I thought I was clever. But most of all, I thought the world was kind. You know, back in my day, kids didn't sit inside all day poking at gadgets. We made our fun, even if it got us in trouble. And Lord knows, I was a master at fin in trouble. But at the time, I didn't see it that way. I saw myself as curious, a little explorer, a girl with too many questions and not enough rules. I didn't mean no harm, most times anyhow. I just wanted to feel everything, taste life, climb it, chase it, tease it, and maybe prank it now and then, just to see what happened. But deep down, way down, underneath all that wild energy, I had a soft heart. I really did. I believed, honest to goodness, that kindness was the most important thing in the world. I thought that if you smiled at someone, they'd smile back. That if you loved hard enough, nobody'd ever leave. That's how my little heart worked. I didn't know yet that people could break, or that words could linger long after the laughter was gone. I hadn't learned that part. Not yet. That summer, though, that summer was the start. The start of me learning the difference between being funny and being cruel, between a game and a wound, between being a child and starting to see the shape of things the way they really are. I didn't know it then, but I was carrying those lessons in my pocket, right next to the marbles and buttons and string. And one of 'em, the first big one, came on a day hot enough to fry an egg on the poor trail. A day when I got it in my head to tie a rope across the road, 'cause I wanted to see if a bicycle would really stop if you pulled it fast enough. But I'll tell you about that in a minute. First, I just wanted you to meet her, the girl I used to be. Just little May. Dirt-smudged knees, heart full of wonder, and not a lick of sense. Now, tell me something honest. When was the last time you looked at who you used to be and really forgave them? Think on that. I'll be right here. Well now, I reckon every child has a moment they wish they could take back. Mine came that summer, the kind of day where the sky hangs heavy and the flies stick to your skin no matter how fast you sweat. The road up front of our house was just packed red clay, hard as concrete in July. I remember watching the heat rise off it like smoke, my mind churning like Mama's egg beater. I had a notion, and once little May had a notion, Lord help us all, it was near impossible to stop it. There was an old rope out back, thick, frayed, strong. I'd seen it sitting there behind the shed for weeks, and something about it called to me. Don't ask me why. I didn't have no ill intent, not really. I just thought, well, I thought it might be funny. I tied one end to the pecan tree by the road, the other to the dogwood across the way. Just low enough to maybe catch a tire. And then I waited. Now, back in Thomaston, our mailman was a man named Mr. Earl. Tall, lean, and always wearing a dusty cap and the same brown uniform no matter the heat. He had kind eyes, smelled like tobacco and motor oil, and always brought June a smile and me a peppermint from his pocket. He never missed a day. Rain, shine, or southern thunderstorm. Mr. Earl would come chugging down the road on his old Schwinn bicycle like clockwork. That day, I crouched behind the porch railing, heart beating like a drum, watching the shimmer of the road for signs of his wheels. And sure enough, there he came, same steady rhythm, same whistling tune, the front basket wobbling with envelopes. And I remember, clear as anything, this one split second when I could have stood up, could have shouted, could have stopped it all. But I didn't. That rope caught him clean across the chest. Lord, he flew off that bicycle like a scarecrow in a storm. Hit the dirt hard. Mail scattered like fall leaves. His cap rolled halfway to our driveway. And I froze. Not Logan. Not even breathing. Just frozen. Mama came tearing out of the house quicker than I'd ever seen her move. June stood on the steps with her hands over her mouth, eyes wide. Mr. Earl, bless his soul, sat up slowly, wiping blood from his lip with the back of his hand. And then, this is what I'll never forget, he looked straight at me. Didn't yell, didn't curse, just looked. I swear to you, in that one look, I learned more about shame than any switch or scolding could teach. My stomach dropped, my cheeks burned, and all I could think was, what have I done? Mama made me clean up every letter, apologize right then and there. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. Her disappointment hung heavier than any scolding. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the crickets and wondering if Mr. Earl's back was hurt, if he'd ever smile at me again, if I'd broken something that couldn't be fixed. I didn't have the words back then, but I know now that was the first time I felt real remorse. Not just fear of getting caught, but the ache of knowing I'd hurt someone. Someone good, someone kind. And maybe that was the day I started to grow up, just a little. Not all the way, Lord, now. I still had a long road ahead of me, full of frogs and fibs and more mistakes. But that rope, that moment, it tied something else in me too. You ever have a moment like that? One where you didn't mean to, that you hurt someone who didn't deserve it? If you have, then you know what I mean when I say, some lessons don't leave scars on your skin. They live deep in your bones. It was the fall after the rope incident. Leaves hadn't quite turned yet, but the air had that crisp snap to it, like the world was holding its breath before letting go. I was 8 by then, a little older, a little quieter, and carrying a whole lot more inside than I knew what to do with. That shame from the summer still hung around me like a sweater 2 sizes too big, itchy, heavy, and always there, even when no one said a word. But what really cracked something in me happened one Saturday morning. Mama had spent the whole week fussing over the church bake sale, and June had a school recital coming up. Everybody seemed to have a place, a job, a purpose. Everybody but me. I tried to help, offered to peel apples, stir batter, even sweep the porch. But Mama just shooed me off, said I made more mess than I fixed. She didn't say it mean. Not really, but that day it cut deep. I already felt like a bad seed, and now I felt useless too. Then it happened. I'd been sitting out on the steps, throwing pebbles at the fence post, when I heard Mama talking to Mrs. Collins across the way. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, not at first, but when I heard my name, well, my ears perked right up like a fox in the woods. She just don't listen, Mama said, sighing, always up to something. I don't know where we went wrong with May. I swear, my breath caught right there in my throat. I didn't cry, not then. I just sat there, still as stone, while something big and cold settled in my chest. I wasn't trying to be wrong. I wasn't trying to be trouble. I was just me, curious, loud, full of feelings I didn't know how to name yet. But in that moment, all I heard was that I was a burden, a problem, something that needed fixin'. And so I made a decision. I was gonna run away. Not forever. I wasn't that dramatic. but just long enough for them to notice I was gone. Long enough to see if anybody would miss me. I packed a paper sock with 2 biscuits, a flashlight, and my favorite marble. Left a note on the porch swing, "I'm leaving. I'll come back if you want me." Then I slipped out through the back gate just before sundown, wearing my brother's old boots and a flannel shirt I stole from the line. I made it all the way to the old chicken shed behind the Miller farm, maybe a mile, tops, before I lost my nerve. It was getting dark fast, and the woods started to creak and moan in that way only country woods do. The bravado drained right out of me like a leaky bucket. I curled up in the straw with my biscuits, heart beating like thunder, and tried not to cry. And that's when I heard it. Not my name, not yet, but Mama's voice, far off, calling out into the dusk. "Nay, nay, where are you?" There was fear in it. Real fear. Not anger. Not scolding. Just a mama's heart stretched thin. I didn't wait. I ran out that shed so fast I near tripped over my own feet. Found her standing by the fence, holding a lantern, eyes wide and wet. She didn't yell. Didn't ask why. Just dropped to her knees and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. And I held on to her like the wind was trying to take me. I never told her why I left. Not really. I didn't know how. Back then, nobody talked much about feelings, especially not little girls with wild hair and loud hearts. But I carried that moment with me. The shame of being called wrong, and the deep, deep ache of wanting to be seen. Not just for what I did wrong, but for who I really was inside. And maybe, just maybe, that's a feeling you've known too. You ever felt like running away, not from a place, but from who folks thought you were? If you have, then you know. And if you haven't, sit with me a little longer. I've got more to tell. I remember that day like it was etched in glass. Spring had just broken through winter's grip, and everything smelled like wet earth, violets, and the first grass cuts of the season. Mama had baked one of her famous blackberry pies, Lord. You could smell it from halfway down the road. She set it on the windowsill to cool, just like she always did, warning us kids, "Now don't y'all so much as look at this pie till supper." But I looked. Oh, I looked. I'd been feeling restless that day. The kind of restless that creeps up when the world feels too small and your own thoughts too loud. June was off with her friends. Daddy was at the mill. And Mama, well, she was humming to herself in the laundry room, beating the dust out of bedsheets. The house was quiet. The pie was sitting there, steam curling like a finger saying, "Just one bite, May. Who's gonna know?" So I took one, then another, and before I knew it, half that pie was gone and my belly felt full and wrong. I stared at that tin, half empty and accusing, and panic hit me like a freight train. I knew what was coming. I saw it clear as day. Mama's face fallen, her voice low with disappointment. Not again. Not after the rope. Not after I ran off. And that's when I saw Duke, our old hound dog, laying lazy under the porch, not a care in the world. And just like that, like it was the most natural thing on God's green earth, I told myself a lie. I smeared some of the blackberry filling on Duke's snout, dragged the tin closer to the ground, and when Mama came back into the kitchen, I gasped, loud and guilty, "Mama!" I cried. "Duke done ate your pie." Mama's face froze. Her hands still clutched the sheet she'd just folded. She looked from me, to the pie tin, to that sweet old dog, now sitting up with confusion in his soft brown eyes. And I'll never forget it, the way her eyes narrowed, slow and sharp. Not angry, just watchful. She didn't say a word, just walked outside, grabbed Duke gently by the collar, and tied him to the back fence. Said, "He don't get supper tonight. Actions have consequences." Then she went back inside. And I felt my world shrink. I wanted to run after her. I wanted to scream it was me, not him. I lied, Mama, I lied. But my mouth stayed shut. Shame held it shut. And fear that she'd finally stop loving me the way she always had, patient, steady, like church bells on Sunday. That night, I couldn't eat. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hearing Duke's low whimper from the yard, and my chest ached in a way I'd never known before. It wasn't just a pie, it was trust. And I broke it. That was the first time I understood the weight of a lie. Not just the trouble it caused, but the space it opened between people, the silence it built. Mama never mentioned it again. Next morning, Duke was untied, fed, loved on like usual. But the way she looked at me, that changed. Just a little, just enough. I knew then, deep down, that I'd done more than sneak dessert. I'd let my fear win. I'd put blame where it didn't belong. And I think maybe that's when I started to carry the weight of what my words could do. You ever done that? Said something just to protect yourself and hurt someone who couldn't even speak to defend themselves? It don't leave a scar on the skin, but it stays all the same. Right here, right in the middle of your chest. After the pie, after Duke, after that look in Mama's eyes that never quite left me, something inside me changed. I didn't notice it all at once. It didn't come with a crack of thunder or some big dramatic revelation. It was quieter than that, like how fall sneaks in on the tail of summer, one cool morning at a time, one shorter day after the next. I still played, still laughed when the neighbor boys did something silly, still sat on the porch swing grass stalks and watching clouds roll by. But it was different now. I was different. I started spending more time by myself, out in the far field where the wild daisies grew, or in the loft of the old barn, reading the same 3 books over and over. I'd listen to the wind in the trees like it was trying to tell me something. I stopped pushing boundaries, stopped testing people's patience. I didn't want to cause trouble anymore. Didn't want to be trouble. Mama never brought up the lie. But she didn't look at me the same after that. Not worse, exactly, just not the same. Like she was seeing me clearer now, and maybe that scared her a little. Maybe it scared me too. And June, well, June always knew more than she let on. She never said a word about the pie either, but sometimes she'd look at me real long, like she was trying to figure out what was going on in my head. We weren't as close that summer. Not like before. I didn't crawl into her bed when the thunder rolled, didn't tell her my secrets or whisper my plans for running away to join the circus or digging to China through the garden. There was a stillness to everything that summer. A pause. I started wondering if this was just what growing up felt like realizing the world wasn't built around your joy. Like learning that other people hurt in ways you can't always see, and sometimes you're the one who causes it. And let me tell you, when that realization sets in, even at 8, 9 years old, it sits in your chest like a stone. My belief in the world didn't vanish. Not completely. But it shifted. I no longer thought kindness was automatic. I started seeing that love had layers, that even the people who love you most can feel disappointment in you and still tuck you in at night. I started understanding that trust, once cracked, don't always glue back the same way. But here's the strange part. In all that quiet, in that empty feeling space where laughter used to be louder and love used to feel simpler, I also started listening more to myself, to other people, to silence. I noticed the way Mama's hands trembled just a little when she poured her coffee in the morning. I noticed how Daddy's shoulders dropped when he walked through the door at night, like he was carrying more than just cotton dust. I saw how June tucked her Bible under her pillow like it might guard her from bad dreams. I started realizing that grown-ups weren't made of stone. They were just kids who kept going. And me? I kept going too. A little slower, a little softer, like someone trying not to make ripples in a quiet pond. I don't think I ever told anybody just how lonely I felt that summer, how much I missed feeling like sunshine. But maybe I didn't have the words for it then. Maybe I still don't. You ever been there? Not sad, not broken, just still. Like the world's turned down its volume and you're the only one who noticed. If you have, then you know. And if you haven't, hold tight. Stillness don't last forever. Sometimes it's just what the heart needs before it starts beating louder again. It was midsummer again, 1957. The kind of day where the heat clings to your skin and the air smells like cut grass, rain-soaked soil, and something sweet baking down the road. I remember sitting under the shade of the big magnolia tree, poking at the dirt with a stick, watching ants march like little soldiers and thinking about nothing in particular, and yet everything all at once. I hadn't felt like myself in a while. Not since the pie. Not since the silence. June and I, we still lived under the same roof, shared the same room, passed the same plates at supper. But there was a distance between us, like a glass pane you couldn't see but always felt when you leaned in too close. She wasn't mad. That was the strange part. She was just quiet, and kind, and far. That afternoon, I heard her Logan with her friend Betty Lou out by the well. That high, bell-like laugh of hers, the one that always sounded like summer itself, and it hit me right in the chest. I missed her. Not just the sound of her voice, but the way she used to braid my hair, or let me tag along, or tell me secrets when the lights were out. And I don't know what got into me. Maybe it was the heat, or the ache of all that time sitting heavy on my shoulders, but something inside me sparked. A little voice that said, "Do something. Say something. Fix it." So I did what any foolish, half-repentant, still silly child might do. I found a frog. Lord knows there were plenty that summer, hopping lazy through the grass like they owned the place. I scooped one up, fat and warty, and stuck it in a shoebox with air holes poked through the top. Then I crept inside, set the box on June's bed, and waited. She came in just before supper, and I watched from the hallway as she opened that lid and jumped a mile high when the frog leapt right onto her lap. I held my breath, but instead of screaming, she just froze, and then she laughed. I mean, really laughed. That kind of laugh that shakes your shoulders and brings tears to your eyes. I stepped into the room, feeling like my heart might tumble out my chest. I thought maybe I said, "Voice small, you'd remember how funny we used to think frogs were." She looked at me for a long second. Then she sat down, still giggling, and said, "You're something else, May." And just like that, the pane of glass between us cracked. We didn't talk about the pie, or a Duke, or the space that had grown between us. But she patted the spot next to her, and I sat down. She reached for my hand, hers soft, warm, no judgment in it, and that's when I whispered it. "I'm sorry." She didn't say, "For what?" She didn't need to. She just squeezed my fingers and said, "I know." And Lord, you could have wrung out the relief in me like water from a wash rag. That night, I helped Mama shell peas on the porch without being asked. I sang low while June combed her hair. I let Duke steal a bite of cornbread under the table. It wasn't everything. It wasn't some grand, life-changing event. But it was a start, a spark. And sometimes, that's all it takes, one good laugh, one real apology, one frog in a shoebox, to remind you that even when you've made a mess of things, you can still come back. You ever had that moment? Not when the world forgave you, but when someone close did, without a speech, without conditions, just because they loved you. If you have, you know how rare and holy that is. And if you haven't, I sure hope you get to feel it one day. There's a little box I keep in my sewing drawer. Been there for decades now. Old, scratched up tin with faded flowers on the lid, used to belong to Mama. Inside, It's full of buttons. Hundreds of 'em. Big ones, tiny ones, pearl, brass, wood, even a few that don't match nothing anymore. I used to sit for hours sifting through them as a girl, listening to Mama hum while she mended shirts or patched up Daddy's pants. But there's one button in there, small, round, brown, barely hanging onto its own thread, that I've never used. Never could, 'cause it's not just a button, it's a weight. It came off June's Sunday dress, the one she was supposed to wear the day she had that big church solo. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 10, maybe 11, and still holding tight to the habit of mischief, though I'd gotten better at hiding it. She was nervous that morning, her hands shakier than usual. I knew it meant the world to her, singing in front of the whole congregation. So what did I do? I teased her, tugged the dress a little too rough. "You ain't gonna hit them high notes with knees knocking like that," I said, half joking, half mean. And the button popped right off. She gasped, clutched the fabric like it could sew itself back on. And I laughed, but it wasn't real. It was a nervous kind of laugh, the kind that hides when you don't know what to do with the way someone else's fear makes you feel. She didn't sing that day. She said she felt sick, but we both knew. And Mama knew, too. She didn't scold me. She just picked up that button from the floor, real gentle, and tucked it in her apron pocket. A week later, she handed it to me. Said, "Keep it, May. One day you'll know what to do with it." I've kept it ever since. Through marriage, babies, moving houses, losing folks. That little button followed me. A reminder of all the things I broke without meaning to. All the words I didn't take back. But last Sunday, I opened that tin again. Was helping my granddaughter Maisie mend her doll's dress. She'd torn it trying to do cartwheels in church shoes. And when I reached in, that old brown button rolled right into my palm. I just sat there, holding it. And for the first time in my whole life, I forgave myself. I saw that girl, little May, not as a villain, not as a mistake, but as a child doing the best she could with too many feelings and not enough words. I saw Mama's tired hands. I saw June's hurt eyes. I saw myself, and I didn't flinch. So I walked out to the porch, lifted the lid of that tin, and let that button fall out onto the wind. Watched it bounce once on the step and vanish in the grass. It was nothing, just a button. But to me, it was everything I'd been carrying that I no longer had to. I didn't cry. Not really. Just breathed deeper than I had in years. Sometimes the biggest choice you make ain't loud, ain't flashy. It's just this. I'm done hurting myself with what I can't change. I chose to live past it. Without conditions. Without rewrites. Just forward. You ever held on to something too long, not 'cause it helped, but 'cause it made you feel like you were paying for it? I did. For years. But not anymore. And maybe it's your time too. I sit on this porch most evenings now. Same one Daddy built with calloused hands and a hammer that always leaned left. It sagged a little over the years like me, I suppose, but it still holds just fine. The wood creaks under my rocker, the way it always has, singing me a song older than any radio tune. The sun sets slower these days, or maybe I've just learned how to watch it better. Either way, I take my time. Tea in hand, blanket over my knees if the breeze turns mean, and the hum of the cicadas fill in the space where noise used to live. Maisie plays in the yard, her laughter rolling across the grass like a hymn. Sometimes I see little May in her, wild eyes, curious fingers, that same itch to test the world's edges. And sometimes, when she does something bold, something messy, she'll peek over at me, just to see if I'm watching. I always am, and I always smile. See, I used to think life was about figuring out the right way to be. Being good, being careful, being enough. But now I think it's more about learning to live with your own story, even the parts you'd rather scratch out. I used to carry shame like a second skin. Felt like every mistake I ever made was stitched into me, the rope, the pie, the button, the silence. But over the years, I learned something they don't teach in school or Sunday sermons. You don't become wise by being right. You become wise by looking back without flinching. And Lord, I've looked back plenty. What I see now ain't a bad girl or a broken one. I see a girl who is learning, one frog at a time. I understand Mama more now, too. Her quiet patience, her long pauses. She wasn't being cold. She was giving me room to grow. And June, bless her heart, taught me what grace looks like without ever calling it by name. The biggest thing I've come to believe is this. We don't need to fix every part of ourselves to be worthy of love. That includes the version of you that lied, that hurt someone, that ran away, that was too loud, too soft, too wild, too scared. You're still here. And maybe that's the point. Sometimes you don't need closure. You just need to keep living. Sometimes the person you were is the only one who could have gotten you here. I tell this story not 'cause I think I've got the answers. Lord knows I don't. But maybe, just maybe, hearing it'll let someone. Maybe you lay down what you've been carrying. Maybe you'll stop waiting for the apology that'll never come, or the perfect day to start over, or the person who left to come knocking on your door. Maybe it's time you chose to live anyway. The porch is quiet now. Fireflies starting to blink like soft little stars. My tea's gone cold, but my heart's warm. You ever sat still long enough to forgive yourself? Not to forget, but to remember without hudding? I hope someday you do. And if you're sitting there waiting on something, a sign, a chance, a moment, maybe this is it. Maybe it's time. Well now, if you've made it this far, bless your heart. I reckon you've sat with me through frogs and pies, ropes and silences, buttons and long summer afternoons. I thank you for listening. Truly. You see, this wasn't just a story about a little girl in dusty overalls, chasing dragonflies and trouble. It wasn't just about a rope stretched across a red clay road or a dog blamed for a pie. It was about all the ways we grow, crooked, slow, sometimes messy, and still find our way back to ourselves. I told this story 'cause sometimes I think we forget that the little versions of ourselves still live inside us. That wild child, that tender heart, that voice that said too much or not enough, she's still here, just sitting a little quieter these days. When I look at Maisie now, I see how life keeps teaching the same lessons in new voices. I don't stop her from making mistakes. I just stay close enough for when she's ready to talk about Am. I reckon that's what I wish someone would have told me back then, that you don't need to be perfect to be loved. You just need someone to stay nearby while you figure things out. So maybe this story, maybe it's not about me at all. Maybe it's about you. Maybe you've got a box in a drawer somewhere, full of things you never quite knew how to let go of. Maybe there's someone you still owe an apology to. Or maybe it's yourself you need to forgive. We all carry something. A regret that lingers. A name we whispered too sharp. A silence we let last too long. But darling, you don't have to carry it forever. You can set it down. You can walk on. You can live anyway. I'm not here to tell you what's right or wrong. I've lived long enough to know the lines ain't always clear. But I am here to remind you, it's never too late to soften. Never too late to love again. Never too late to say, that was me back then, but I'm still here now. So before I let you go, let me ask you something. Not a big question, just one that might sit with you for a while. Do you still believe that people can change? Not all at once. Not with grand speeches or sudden light. But little by little, like seasons turn in, like the way summer fades into fall. I do. Not 'cause I read it in a book or heard it in a sermon, but because I lived it. I was that girl, and now I'm this woman. And somewhere between the two, I became whole. Maybe you're still on your way. That's all right. The road don't end just 'cause it gets quiet. Sometimes, when the house is still and the wind's just right, I close my eyes and I swear I can hear my sister singing again. That soft high note she never sang in church, but always hummed when she thought no one was listening. And sometimes, I think Duke still waits for me at the back fence, tail thumping, forgiving me even now. And sometimes, when Maisie laughs and the light hits her just right, I see little May and her, dancing barefoot through the years. I suppose that's the story I'm leaving behind. Not one of perfection, but of trying, of loving, of learning how to live anyway. So tell me, what part of your story are you still afraid to speak out loud? Maybe it's time. Maybe you're ready. I'll be right here, listening.